a brand new episode of T Watches a Scary Movie. My name is T, and of course, we're talking scary movies. I appreciate you tuning in. Remember, audio-only versions of our episodes go up every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on your favorite podcasting platforms out there. iTunes, Amazon Music, wherever you got, you can find us on there. And if you're seeing this handsome face, that means you're watching us on YouTube. Video versions of the episodes go up at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time every Wednesday night. So you can check the show out however you want to, but of course, I want you to watch the video version because there's a little bit more me in there now. But I digress. Yeah, new episodes every Wednesday night, audio-only version at 8 p.m., video version at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And of course, you got to follow us on all of our channels that we have out there, including Twitter. You can find me at AXDEW, Instagram, Theron_Reynolds. The YouTube page is youtube.com/C/Theron Reynolds Scary Movie. And then, of course, the Facebook group where we have great conversations is facebook.com/group/T Scary Movie. Again, that's facebook.com/group/T Scary Movie. Get to the Facebook group. That's where you can find out about our watch parties that we do. We do watch parties every Wednesday night before and after the show. Usually they're going to have something in there that we're talking about on the show. So, for example, tonight we're watching the 2005 film Cursed. And we're going to do a little bit of our TV watch party as well. But if you want to find out how to join, got to go to the Facebook group. Yes, the Discord link is right there. That's where we watch everything. So you could just go directly to the Discord. But if you want to have some fun conversation, get to the Facebook group and have that with us as well too now. So, I already kind of mentioned what we were watching in the watch party, and that should let you know what we have coming up in tonight's episode. Yes, folks, that's right. Werewolf Madness begins. We're going to be looking at the 2022 werewolf movie, The Cursed, followed by the 2005 werewolf thriller, Cursed. Two entirely different and separate movies, both about werewolves, though. We're checking that out here tonight on the show. But before we get into that, I want to make sure y'all know, I told you last week on the show, actually, I guess I told you the week before that as well, too, that I was going to be giving away 2 copies of Scream 2022 or Scream 5 or 5 Cream, whatever you want to call it, basically. I was giving away 2 copies of that, a digital copy as well as a physical copy to 2 of you who were following me on Twitter and that you shared the episode as well. Yeah, so I'm reaching out to you guys right now. So check your messages because you might have a message from me there for a free copy of Scream 5. Yeah. And even more so, before we start talking werewolf movies tonight, we had a great conversation in the Facebook group about our favorite movie theater candy. I, of course, posted a photo of caramel apple sugar babies, which are so good. They're my favorite. They can't really get them in theaters anymore. They're very, very limited. So the only place I've been able to get them these days has been Amazon. But y'all had some great ideas there for movie theater candy. Of course, a few of you were saying Red Vines, which is also the pinnacle for me. Their Red Vines are so good. I absolutely put those synonymous with movie theaters because that's always what I would get. Those and nachos would always be whatever I would get, but nachos aren't candy. Some of y'all put down Reese's Pieces were on there. Milk Duds were there, which Milk Duds are just the regular size sugar babies at that. I saw Reese's Pieces on there as well. Sour Patch Kids. Y'all had a lot of good stuff. Raisinets were a popular one, which is insane, man. I love that we're all kind of over the spectrum. What kind of movie theater candy that we all enjoy. I just wish that more theaters could reach out and do a lot more because unlike the way it was back in the heyday of the 2000s or even the late 90s to where movie theaters kind of had a bit of everything, we don't really get that with movie theaters these days. At least here in Colorado, basically we're going to get the same like 5 or 6 candies at every single theater, no matter the chain, and that's a bit of a bummer. Honestly, that is the top reason why like most people bring snacks into theaters, and I do it myself. I don't feel bad about it because snacks are expensive these days, but theaters get better snacks and we can go from there. I mean, there's more than just a few candy bars and then nasty ass Twizzlers and everything. There are definitely other options out there, but I'm curious, if you didn't take a part in this conversation in the Facebook group, what is your favorite movie theater candy? I need to know this to find out like what's hitting the top. Because again, from the Facebook group, Reese's Pieces were definitely up there, as well as Milk Duds. Those two were seemingly like the high two that folks are really, really liking on the Facebook conversation. So I'm curious, to those of y'all not in the Facebook group, hit me in the comments. Let me know, what movie theater candy are you bringing in, or are you buying when you're there? What do you like having when you're watching a scary movie? Make sure to let me know in the comments. So with that, we got to get into some werewolf madness. And we are going to start this off with 2022, The Cursed. Now, if you recall, some of you might have seen the trailer for this movie here. This movie was originally called 8 for Silver, and it had been previewed for a little bit here about being one of the best horror films of the year. The trailer didn't really give much away at all, to its credit and its benefit, because, you know, with horror films especially, I think we all know that a lot can be given away in the trailer, sometimes too much, letting you know any kind of twist or secrets that we're supposed to learn over the course of the movie. But the trailer for The Curse didn't really tell us all that much. Yes, there was going to be some kind of curse. Yes, there was some kind of monster or plague that was just killing citizens in this old school town back Battle of the Somme, which is, oh man, God, what was that, 1800s there? I don't remember years, y'all. I'm going to tell you that right now. Maybe the early 1900s. I don't know. That wasn't really important to the actual story itself. But it is a period piece. And I love that a lot about certain like monster movies in the horror genre, because I think that a lot of times, especially in the last like 25 years or so, we get a lot of great adaptations of things like vampires and werewolves and zombies and all these things in modern time, which works out great because we're in modern times. So of course, we're going to see ourselves in those kind of films. But I do feel that there is something special when we do a dated period piece for monster movies, because those characters don't really have the same means that we do in modern times. You know, we don't have the internet to look up what we can do about these monsters that are attacking us. We don't have ready access to weaponry or anything like that. It's not easy to get away or travel between like cities and states and things like that. So I find it incredibly interesting whenever we get period films for monster movies, and that's what this definitely was. The whole setup for this was that a land baron named Seamus decides that the only way to basically get this piece of land that he believes that he has a right to is to wipe out this Roma clan, or as they're called sometimes, gypsies, to wipe out this clan, this Roma clan of gypsies, and basically take their land. Now, the problem is that this clan does have a rightful claim to the land that they're settled on. So of course, Seamus is choosing to sack this group of gypsies, basically to take what he believes is his. And just like it always happens, and there's a curse. There is absolutely a curse that gets put upon him and put upon this entire town for their crimes against these Roma people. And this is where our movie really takes off, is that we're led to believe that this has something similarly to Dracula 2000, which actually I feel is such a fantastic, unexpected tie into this, because I'm not saying they're in the same world in the least bit. But if you recall, in Dracula 2000, the idea was that Dracula was Judas. Dracula is the one who betrayed Jesus Christ. The rope didn't break, and that was the start of vampirism. That's why silver hurts vampires, and it all kind of made sense. 8 for Silver, The Curse goes with the same kind of mindset, to where we're not saying that there's some werewolf around that's Judas or anything like that, but the whole curse, where it all comes from, is the idea that these 30 pieces of silver were made into werewolf fangs, and those fangs basically have some kind of supernatural curse tied to them, that anybody that gets bit by them slowly turns into a creature, and anybody they bit turns into a creature as well. Now, that's not a spoiler. That is werewolf lore. Werewolf bites somebody, and then that person becomes a werewolf. They bite somebody, they become a werewolf. And just like vampires, you know, if you want to stop that curse, want to stop that disease, you have to kill the original. You have to kill who started this all to begin with, because if you do that, then everything is good to go at that point. And so I like the fact they put their own little twist on it by adding the connection to Judas and Jesus. That, hey, these 30 pieces of silver are cursed and they've been passed down from people to people to people. And basically the idea is that they're used as a measure of revenge. And I like that. I think that's a crazy smart idea, honestly. I think that actually gives 8 for Silver something incredibly new. Something incredibly new to think about and to work with. Honestly, I really think it was a good story point for them to bring in. Now, in terms of the actual creatures or werewolves themselves, again, 8 for Silver takes a very unique approach to the design of them and the way that the monsters also show up as well too. We really don't get to see that much in the way of a transformation, which is one of the biggest parts of werewolf movies and werewolf TV shows, all werewolf media, is that you want to see what the transformation is. Like, I don't like an American Werewolf in London, but the transformation in American Werewolf in London is fucking top notch. And there's a lot of other werewolf movies out there like that do the same thing. So it is a bit of a bummer that The Curse doesn't really give us any good transformation scene. They set up what happens to all of the victims, all of the afflicted of this disease, and when that transformation begins to start to occur, but we only really see the beginning process of that. And it's only a bummer. It doesn't detract from the film, but it's only a bummer because it's kind of cool to compare all these transformations of creatures and werewolves to each other and trying to figure out which one you like the best, which franchise, which movie. I think that's actually a really cool thing to be able to do. So that's the only bummer. It doesn't actually take away from this story here at all. And it's also not really a mystery. That's one of the more intriguing things about this film as well too, is that most werewolf movies have one of two ways they're going to go. One, we don't know who the actual, not master werewolf, but who started this entire problem typically is, and we're kind of playing a cat and mouse game of who did it, who's actually the werewolf behind all this. We have to kill this person, because if we do, all these other werewolves turn back and our lead character or characters are going to be all okay. That's typically option A. Option B is it's actually not this mystery at all. We know that our main character has been bitten by a werewolf, and now we're following that character to basically cure themselves. It's not really a mystery. They know who's behind it, and that's the movie, is them trying to stop the person that bit them or ultimately stop themselves. Those are really the variety of werewolf movies that we get. And The Curse doesn't really go for either one of those, because the perspective that we're working with in this film is from most times from the eyes of Boyd Holbrook's character, John McBride, who has been brought in to kind of investigate the pathology of this disease that's afflicting this town. And that works extremely well because we really don't need the mystery of this story. We know there are creatures that are out there murdering people. The mystery is not who's actually behind it, because we know the reason why this is happening. Because Seamus sacked this land where this Roma clan was residing. This is what caused all of it. So whoever this first werewolf is, this first creature, it's completely irrelevant to the story. And I like that we established that very firmly, so we can get away from that and just enjoy the suspense of who's going to die in this movie. And the death scenes in it, they are bloody. They're bloody for sure. They're not as brutal as they could be, which is kind of interesting for a werewolf movie, because usually that's one of the biggest things, that they're not these other creatures. They're not vampires, which are all romantic a lot of times in their portrayal of just a bite in the neck and everything. No, werewolves are flesh eaters, so they're definitely ripping people apart. They're tearing people up. And usually these are very bloody scenes. And there's a lot of blood in The Curse for sure, but the gore and everything to it isn't as bad as you might expect. And I think that balance between the two actually really good, because if we're going to get a lot of blood, I don't know if I need to see a million ripped off limbs or ripped up bodies and things like that. And those things are present. And even without the werewolves, there's some very brutal scenes of torture in this movie as well, too. Things that happen to the Roma clan at the beginning of the film. So the film strikes a great delicate balance between giving us a lot of blood, but also not giving us an overly gory amount of werewolf killings in it as well, too. Story-wise, I think the story itself The character motivations are definitely strong. Something about it didn't hit the right way. And I don't mean that negatively, because I still really did enjoy the film. But we learn a lot about John McBride's character, that the reason why he's doing all this, the reason why he's so interested in this particular curse, is because his family was afflicted by this curse at one point in time as well too. So there's that personal connection. The other part of this is that Seamus's family, which is portrayed by Kelly Riley, who I know from Eden Lake, y'all might know her from Yellowstone or even True Detective, plays Isabel, his wife, and then their kids as well too. Anne Marie, no, it's Charlotte and, oh God, what is the kid's name? Edward. Charlotte and Edward. We see a lot of the film through the eyes of Seamus's family as well too, but I think the problem is that we don't get enough time with them, and so the narrative seems sometimes a little bit lopsided, because it either should have been half and half. We're getting a half John McBride and half of Seamus's family, or we have to commit to one or the other. And the film doesn't really commit necessarily. Like, John is definitely set up as our protagonist, but we spend so much time with Isabel and Charlotte as well too, that it's trying to like grapple with who our actual lead character is a lot of times, it seems. And to no detriment of the cast. Again, Boyd Holbrook does a great job playing this like haunted doctor who's just trying to find what took something very important away from him and stop it from happening to someone else. Kelly Riley does an amazing job in anything that she's doing, honestly. I love her in everything I've seen her in. And again, she's playing the tortured wife who just wants to protect her family, but we're in olden times where women didn't have as big or as strong of a voice as they had a right to have at that point. So a lot of what she's saying is just drowned out by Seamus, of course. So the acting is fantastic in this film. Everybody does a great job with the period atmosphere of the piece as well too. There's not much really in here in the way of things like jump scares, and there's not much in the way of I don't know, like traditional scares either. Like, I do like the fact that the horror of this piece is from, again, the brutality of the creature and what some of our human characters do to other human characters, but also just from the creature itself, okay? Like, we don't have to have that creature popping out doing a jump scare to actually scare us or anything. The design on them is a pretty interesting and unique one compared to other werewolf designs that you might have seen in other films and other werewolf media as well. And that's really, I think, where most of the horror in this is coming from, and it does a good job. I think this is something that for sure, if you could get get your teenagers into watching, this could be something that kind of scares them a bit. But I don't think most adults are going to have an issue watching this movie. But that being said, it's still a really, really good watch. The thing is, folks, I don't know when it's hitting streaming. I would imagine here within the next month, just because it's not playing on too many screens here right now. If you get a chance to go see it in theaters, please support this film. Make sure that it gets the due that it rightfully deserves, because a lot of original horror, when we get it, isn't getting supported, all right? We get a lot of our legacy stuff like Scream, like Candyman, like Chucky, that always gets support whenever people need it. But original horror, we have to support it or we don't get a lot of those stories. I am not against giving us 20 sequels in Scream, 20 Nightmare on Elm Streets, 20 Friday the 13th. But if you want original horror, you gotta go and check it out when you can, folks. See movies like this, see movies like Studio 666, which I'm desperately trying to see before it's out of theaters as well, too. Support original horror so we can get more. All right, so with that, it's time to shift to a completely different werewolf movie that happens to share the exact same name minus the. Folks, we are now talking 2005's Cursed. Now, if you've heard of this movie, there's a good chance you've heard about a lot of the controversy behind this film. Now, this movie was originally set up to be released in 2003. It was directed by Wes Craven and written by his longtime collaborative partner, Kevin Williamson. They've worked together on numerous films before, and case in point, Scream. Obviously, that franchise was a big thing for the two of them. But one thing that we've talked about before here on the show is that Wes Craven knows horror. That is his thing. He is the master of horror. That's my guy. Kevin Williamson Kevin Williamson is big on being able to write believable dialogue for teenagers. That's one of the things he excels at, is that man absolutely kills it when it comes to writing for teens. And so another collaborative effort from them was always going to be looked at as something amazing. Was always going to be fantastic, obviously. And again, the thing about this film, it's gone through a lot of different cast members. It's gone through a lot of different script revisions. It's gone through a lot of different everything. The version that we got in 2005, it's unfortunately a flawed film. I still enjoy it. I know that Wes Craven himself, not a fan of it. I know that most people are not big fans of this movie, but I actually feel there is a lot to mine out of what we got in the theatrical version, which they're still good in it. Now, I am still and will always be intrigued by the mythical Craven cut. This film, as it came out into theaters, starred Christina Ricci, Jesse Eisenberg, Joshua Jackson as our three leads in the film itself. And in the original version of the film, it was Skeet Ulrich, Christina Ricci, and Jesse Eisenberg as our three leads. And the story was very, very different, to where the original story was about these three completely disconnected characters. I believe actually Christina Ricci and Skeet Ulrich's characters were supposed to be dating, but Jesse Eisenberg's character and Christina Ricci's character were not brother and sister in that version at all. And it was like three different tales of what you're doing with this power of becoming a werewolf, and who embraces it, who hates it, who's an actual curse for, yada 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 yada. And I don't want to go too far into that, because that's a whole story for a completely different time about what makes that original version that's apparently floating around out there, script-wise and everything, so much more interesting than what we got. But we can only really talk about what y'all get a chance to see as well, too. So rather than go down that rabbit hole, let's talk about the theatrical version of Cursed. Now, story for this one is simple. Brother and sisters, Jesse Eisenberg, brother and sisters. I don't know why I said it like that. But Ellie and Jimmy Myers, played by Christina Ricci and Jesse Eisenberg, are a brother and sister living in Hollywood, California. Christina Ricci character works for the Late Show with Craig Kilborn. That's a throwback for y'all, when Craig Kilborn had a show, a late night show on TV. But she works for the Craig Kilborn show. And Jesse Eisenberg's character, Jimmy, is a high school student who is a dweeb, a geek, one of those typical characters who nobody is really caring about in the slightest bit. During a car accident that happens one late night where they're trying to save a character played by Shannon Elizabeth, both are attacked by a werewolf. And then we spend the movie basically following them, seeing how each of them are taking in their new circumstances. How do they react to these new powers and these new changes in their lives? Not only trying to make sure they're not killing anybody, but at the same time, how does it help them in their professional lives and their personal relationships? And that's Cursed in a nutshell. The idea, and I hate calling anything that like Kevin Williamson and Wes Craven do together, is that it's Scream but this. But sometimes sometimes it's just the easiest way to describe a film. And I don't know if that really applies here, because we're not really dealing with like a group of teenagers or anything like that. But what I will say is that this was definitely supposed to be a very meta werewolf movie. One thing that werewolf movies in the past, whatever you're looking at, have been really good about is that, like vampire movies, we know the rules. Like, that's the way that those movies always work out, is that there's always a legend about a werewolf. There's always somebody who knows about a werewolf, and somebody can always explain the rules. And we get that here in Cursed as well, too. Portia de Rossi's character, who plays a fortune teller, is actually somebody who knows a lot about what's going on to these characters and what they're kind of dealing with. And they kind of hammer that in even more these days, because of course we are in the 2000s. The internet is a thing, so it's easy for characters to look this information up and find other people online who have been through the same thing. And honestly, I think that's one of the better traits about this movie, is that it doesn't actually treat us like we're stupid. We're not spending a lot of time trying to look up werewolf mythology and everything. They don't really go a lot into that background. And I don't think we need to, because I assume Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson kind of looked at it and was like, look, y'all know the way werewolves work. You've seen a million of these movies prior to seeing this one. We don't really need to go through all of this again. We're going to give you the bare minimum, and we're going to work with that. And that allows them to actually focus on telling, and actually, in my opinion, a very interesting story about the dynamics of a werewolf pack. And that's something that we don't really get to see a lot. There was another film that came out later on called Skinwalkers that kind of adopted that a little bit as well too. But the idea here is that the motivations of our killers are starting their own pack, but there can't be competition to that pack at all. It's not about, hey, we got to stop werewolves. Werewolves are evil. Oh my God, they're like vampires. Kill them and things like that. No, it's that the purpose of these killers is that they want to take out any competition to their position in this pack of the werewolf. There's an alpha, there's an omega, there's betas, all that kind of thing. If you've seen, any of that kind of stuff in previous werewolf movies or mythology, and same thing with dogs, to where there's got to be an alpha, and then there's got to be that omega, and then nobody else really matters at that point. And this movie tells a very smart story, in my opinion, about those who might challenge those positions in a werewolf pack. And that really actually made me enjoy it a lot more. Like, especially on a recent rewatch to get ready for this review, I found myself noticing that more and more. I was like, oh, well, it's not just a bunch of random people dying, which I should have given more credit to Kevin Williamson and Wes Craven for that anyway. But it's not just a bunch of random people dying. There's actual meaning behind all of these deaths that are occurring in this movie. And then we combine that with the effects of the werewolf itself, especially when we just looked at The Curse just a few moments ago. The practical effects in The Cursed are actually really good. I like the design of the werewolf. I also like the fact that when we see that practical werewolf suit, the makeup, everything there with it, it looks really cool compared to the very dated CGI. Now, I didn't see this movie back in 2005 when it came out. I remember it took me a while to actually catch it. I don't think I even saw it till 2007 or 8, I want to say it was. And I really enjoyed it when I saw it in 2007 or 2008. But I do wonder if the CGI of the werewolf would have been a lot cooler had I seen it back when it came out. So anybody that did see it in 2005, let me know in the comments what you thought about the design of the werewolf. Not the practical, but you know what I'm talking about. The CGI that they use a lot in the end. I'm curious what you think about that design. Let me know if it was cool in 2005 or not, because now I get it. It's super dated, but I'm wondering if back then it looked a lot cooler than what it did. Now, in terms of the kills in this movie, there's not actually too many of them. There are a few, but it is played a bit like a slasher film, which, again, considering our filmmakers behind it, it makes a lot of sense that they go that route. And because of that, the body count is not actually that high, which for a werewolf movie, that's not necessarily a good thing, because we're trying to sell the brutality of this, sell why this is just such a bad thing that's happening. And I think that's going to be one of my biggest complaints about the film, is that we probably needed more kills to sell like how serious this entire situation was. And I get it. I don't know what's left over from the original version to this new version, so I don't know if there were more kills initially that would have made things a lot more interesting and a lot more drawn out. Who knows? But that's the one thing I do feel that was missing from it. And another thing that really has to be talked about, only because I actually feel it's quite genius, and considering Kevin Williamson wrote it, Kevin Williamson, and we'll get there, character by the name of Bo, that's played by Milo Ventimiglia from This Is Us, you might know as Jack Pearson, is playing one of the antagonists of the film. And I say antagonist, he's not one of the bad guys, but he's set up as a villain earlier on in the film. Plays a character named Bo, who is very homophobic, and he's dropping a lot of very much outdated and offensive dialogue that you absolutely could not get away with today. But here's the thing about it, though. It's to me, and I say specifically to me, because I respect anybody who doesn't have this opinion and they're not down with it in the least bit. I'm not saying that I am, but I also understand now from a 2022 lens what Kevin Williamson maybe was going for here. Kevin Williamson himself is gay, and he wrote the script. So the way it came off to me, because the eventual reveal is that Bo is covering for himself, and that Bo himself is actually gay. And And so it seems very much that part of the reason why Bo is so homophobic and throwing a lot of these slurs out and talking the way he is because he's hiding things from everybody else, basically. And so the more you kind of throw that out, the less everybody suspects, which makes a lot of sense, actually. So I wanted to touch on that just really quickly, because I actually thought that's one of the more interesting things about Cursed, is that Kevin Williamson wrote this character, Bo, who actually I enjoyed quite a lot. And the fact that his homophobia and the way he talks about it makes a lot of sense when that reveal is finally given. So just a nice quirk about the movie that I thought was actually really, really cool. Beyond that, great cast in this film itself. I think it's actually kind of interesting to see a lot of these people before they really, really started blowing up, especially like Jesse Eisenberg, Michael Rosenbaum, and even like Shannon Elizabeth, who was kind of at the end of like the horror spectrum, which is kind of cool because, again, Shannon Elizabeth spent the late 90s and early 2000s being this big horror icon, and the fact that she gets to make a cameo in this, and it's kind of like the end of her segueing out of the horror genre and everything. I thought that was kind of cool as well. Bowling for Soup has a cameo in this film, which lets you know how dated it is as well too, which I like Bowling for Soup. They're not bad in the least bit, but there's a lot to really enjoy, I feel, about this movie itself. It does not all work. It definitely does not all work, because as weird as it sounds, and I know there's a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, it's only 97 minutes long. I say only. It's an hour and a half. I actually feel that another 20 to 25 minutes would have helped this movie a lot. Give us another werewolf attack, but then you have to put Joshua Jackson in the movie more. Not because I necessarily just love Joshua Jackson, but the problem with this is that we are playing a bit of a whodunit in this movie, which again makes sense given the filmmaking team behind it, but they make it very easy to figure out who's behind it all. Like, there are multiple killers in this movie, but at least one of those killers, we can work out pretty quickly who it is because this person doesn't have a lot of screen time. And they're not actually portrayed as, with a lot of good qualities to them. And if you're going to do that, that's very much setting up who the killer is. And I think that's one of the downsides, that if we had more time with Joshua Jackson, if maybe we got to see him being attacked, and maybe we got to see him dealing with the other killer in the movie, that would really help cover up the fact that he's also one of the bad guys in this movie. And I guess maybe that would have pinpointed a little bit too much who the other killer was, but the problem is that there are no other suspects. So, like Michael Rosenbaum, for example, who's in the film, I think is thrown in there as a potential red herring, and it's like, no, but he can't be. There's not enough of him in this movie to be a red herring at all, which I guess makes sense considering who the other killer does end up being, that complaint's a bit moot. But that's one of the issues with the movie that I feel another 20 to 25 minutes could have really helped this out with. With all that, though, I don't actually think it's as bad as it gets a rap for. Is it going to be in anybody's top 5 or top 10 werewolf movies? Probably not. But I also don't think it should be in the bottom of anybody's list because there's still a lot of good elements in this movie, I think, to enjoy. I like, again, the design of the werewolf in the film itself. I think that was actually one of the coolest parts of it. I like giving us different perspectives of how this werewolf curse is afflicting people. So one person's really embracing it and they're really thriving in their life, where the other person, you know, is kind of like it's the biggest hindrance on everything that they're doing at that point. And yeah, there's all this sexual tension, but that's, again, such a small part of the film itself. I like that. What the heck was I gonna say there? I liked everything that was going on with Bo in the film. I think that's really, really great characterization to write for somebody, especially in a horror film, when you can go completely in the opposite direction as well too. I like the whodunit aspect of it. I just wish, again, there was more time and more suspects to add to it. But either way, I do think it's worth checking out. Scream Factory is actually releasing it on Blu-ray here, finally, in the next few weeks. So that's something that everybody's going to definitely want to jump on as well, too. But gives you some good werewolf horror to start off with, folks. 2 films, same name, The Cursed and Cursed. One of them's on streaming right now. The other one should be there within the next month. And that is going to do it for us, y'all. We got to talk some werewolf horror tonight, and we got to talk some awesome movie theater snacks. Make sure you're back here next week, where I'm going to be talking about Werewolves Within and Silver Bullet. We're continuing the werewolf madness, y'all. So, by the light of the full moon, get to the Facebook group so you can come and watch some scary stuff with us tonight, folks. But that's my time. I'm T. We've been talking scary movies. Stay scared.